Well, let's be honest. That trade still stings for a lot of us. 1 minute Micah Parsons is the face of the Cowboys pass rush. The next minute he's suddenly in a Green Bay uniform and everyone on social is already writing the headline. Cowboys would be better if Micah was still here. I get the emotion behind that. He's an explosive player, a ticket-snagging highlight machine. And when you lose a player like that, it's easy to look for a quick explanation for why things aren't going right. But before we jump to the easy take that adding Micah automatically solves everything, let's rewind and set the record straight on what really happened and why that narrative deserves a second look. First, yes, the move was sudden and shocking. Jerry pulled a move that has left fans debating optics and motives. And Micah walking back into Dallas in a rival uniform adds salt to the wound. But let's not confuse shock value with proof. People are saying we'd be undefeated, or we'd be fixed if Micah were still on this roster. That's a tempting story, because it gives us someone to blame or credit. But football doesn't work like that. Facts matter. Look back at last season. Micah was here, healthy for large chunks of the year, and the Cowboys still struggled at times. You remember the early losses, the big points given up, the games that looked disorganized. Micah is a huge piece of the puzzle, absolutely, but he wasn't a magic wand that reshaped a defense alone. Also, when fans throw out stats, they often mean well, but miss context. Micah's pass rush numbers are impressive, and they should be. But through the early stretch after the trade, he hadn't posted the kind of back-to-back sack explosions people imagine. 1 sack through the first 3 games, a few tackles, and a lot of attention from opposing lines. That doesn't make him any less of a game wrecker long term, but it does show why saying we'd be better without context is simplistic. We also need to remember how teams adjust. Offensive lines and coordinators game plan for him. That affects his raw numbers and the way the rest of the defense performs. The reality is more complicated. Micah can change games, but he isn't the only reason games are won or lost. So before you type "trade ruined us" in the comments, stick around. We're going to break down his real impact, where he helps the most, where he doesn't, and whether adding one elite edge rusher would undo the Cowboys' bigger problems. Quick one for you right now, vote in the comments. Do you think the Cowboys would be better today with Micah Parsons back on the roster? Type yes or no, and tell me one sentence why. And if you want more breakdowns like this, hit that subscribe button. We're pushing for 16,000 subscribers, and every like helps get these conversations to more Cowboys fans. Ready for the deep dive? Micah Parsons is one of those players you can't just gloss over. He's explosive. He's dynamic, and he can absolutely wreck a drive when he pins his ears back and gets after the quarterback. I'll say it straight. When you look at pure pass rush talent, very few guys in the league stack up to him. He's got the burst, he's got the bend, and he's got that relentless motor that quarterbacks absolutely hate to see. That's why so many people instantly assume that if he were still in Dallas, everything about this defense would look different. And on the surface, it's not a crazy thought. But here's the truth. Football isn't played on paper. And one man, no matter how dominant, doesn't erase systemic issues. Now let's talk numbers, because a lot of fans like to throw those around when making the case for or against Micah. Last season, he finished with double-digit sacks. And yes, that's nothing to sneeze at. But you've got to zoom in closer. Through the first 3 games of that season, Parsons managed just a single sack. He had 3 total tackles, 1 assisted tackle, and that lone sack came against a Cleveland team that later showed itself to be flat-out terrible. Against the Saints, 0 sacks. Against the Ravens, same story. He was present, he was active, but he wasn't single-handedly changing outcomes the way highlight reels make you think. That doesn't mean he wasn't valuable. Quarterback pressures, double teams, forced adjustments, those things matter even when they don't show up in the box score. But here's the flip side. If we're honest, stats and tape combined tell us a simple story. Micah can tilt the field, but the Cowboys were still giving up massive yardage and struggling defensively even when he was healthy and on the roster. And let's address something a lot of people don't want to admit. Micah isn't flawless. His strength is rushing the passer. That's what he was born to do. But when it comes to the run game, when it comes to setting the edge consistently or plugging holes against physical ground-and-pound teams, that's not his bread and butter. He's not invisible in those situations, but his impact isn't nearly the same. So when we ask, would we be better with him right now, we need to be real. Sure, maybe the sack totals are higher. Maybe you force one or two more hurried throws. But does that fix coverage breakdowns in the secondary? Does that stop teams from gouging us for nearly 200 yards on the ground? No, that's not how this works. Another thing, fans love to imagine that just plugging him back in means defenses are fixed. But think about this. Opposing teams know exactly who he is. They prepare for him. They chip him with tight ends. They slide protection. They force him to chase mobile quarterbacks like Lamar Jackson. And the results are often modest on paper. Again, it's not his fault. It's how teams respect him. But that respect doesn't always equal wins. What it does mean is that one elite talent gets neutralized more often than people realize, and the rest of the unit has to step up. When they don't, the defense struggles, and that's exactly what we saw before. So yes, Micah Parsons is incredible. He's emotional, fiery, and when he's at his best, he's the kind of player you pay to watch. But the narrative that he alone would have us cruising at 3-0 right now doesn't line up with reality. Football is more complex than that. Greatness matters, but scheme, depth, and execution matter just as much, if not more. Here's something I want you to do. Drop your favorite Micah Parsons play in the comments. Was it one of those? Bend around the wedge sacks? Was it a chase down tackle that shocked you? Let's see which moment fans remember most. And while you're down there, hit that subscribe button. We're pushing hard toward 16,000 subscribers, and with your help, we'll get there faster. Plus, don't forget to tap the bell so you don't miss the next deep dive, because we're only getting started. When you take a step back and really look at this Cowboys team, the Micah Parsons debate becomes less about one player and more about the bigger picture. Let's be honest. This defense hasn't looked like the well-oiled machine fans were hoping for. But you can't pin that all on the absence of one guy. The truth is, this group has been inconsistent for years. And a lot of that comes down to coaching, turnover, injuries, and guys not stepping up when their number is called. Think about it. We've cycled through defensive coordinators faster than some teams change head coaches. Dan Quinn, Mike Zimmer, now Matt Eberflus. That kind of constant change doesn't just reset schemes, it resets identities. Players have to learn new systems, new terminology, new philosophies, and that instability shows on the field. And here's the part people forget. Last season, even with Parsons healthy and available, this defense still struggled in some of the exact same ways we're seeing now. The opener, sure, it was a comfortable win. But right after that, the Saints hung 44 points on us. The Ravens ran wild with 274 rushing yards in just one game. The Giants nearly snuck away with a win that came down to the wire. These weren't isolated slip-ups. They were signs of a unit that, even with talent, couldn't put it all together. So when people say, oh, if Micah was here, we'd be 3-0 right now, I've got to push back. Last year, with Micah, we were sitting at 1-2 after 3 games. That's the exact same spot we're in now. It's not an opinion, it's a fact. Now let's talk about personnel beyond Micah. Dante Fowler hasn't been the difference maker the Cowboys hoped he'd be. Sam Williams still hasn't taken that leap forward. Donovan Ezeiruku, the rookie, is understandably learning on the fly. Meanwhile, guys like Malik Hooker and Donovan Wilson are still here, but they haven't elevated the unit in the way fans expected. And this is what I keep circling back to. One player doesn't fix everything. If the surrounding pieces aren't producing, if your front seven is getting gashed in the run game, or your secondary is giving up deep shots, It doesn't matter if you've got one of the best pass rushers in football. Opponents will just adjust and attack somewhere else. Something else we've got to talk about is attitude. This team doesn't always bring the same energy week in and week out. Micah is an emotional leader, no question about it. But emotion doesn't cover up execution issues. If your linebackers are out of position, if your safeties are getting beat over the top, emotion only goes so far. At some point, it comes down to fundamentals, discipline, and making tackles when they're right in front of you. So where does that leave us? It leaves us with a defense that has to stop leaning on what could have been and start owning what it is. The talent isn't perfect, but it's not barren either. There are enough playmakers here to keep this unit competitive, if they buy in. Play smart and adjust to the system instead of waiting for one star to bail them out. That's the hard truth, and it's one Cowboys fans need to hear. Now, I want your take on this. Do you think the Cowboys' defensive struggles come more from coaching changes or from player performance? Drop your vote in the comments. Type coaching if you think it's the revolving door of coordinators. Or type players if you believe the guys on the field just aren't getting it done. I'll be checking those responses. And while you're there, make sure you hit that like button to help us push this video out to more Cowboys fans. Every like makes a difference. All right, here's the bottom line. Two truths can be true at the same time. Micah Parsons is an elite pass rusher and an emotional leader. And the Dallas Cowboys would not automatically be a fundamentally different team today, just because one star returned. If you strip away the highlights and the hot takes, what you find is a team with recurring issues that go beyond edge pressure, inconsistent scheme execution, coordinator turnover, weaknesses against the run, and role players who haven't consistently stepped up. Micah helps. Of course he helps. He creates pressure, attracts double teams, and forces offenses to game plan differently. That ripple effect can make life easier for the rest of the defense and create splash plays that change momentum. But he isn't a cruel when the front seven can't set the edge or the secondary is getting beat over the top. One premier pass rusher won't magically make every assignment right. Remember last season, with Micah on the field, we still had games where the run defense was gashed and where the unit simply didn't execute. That historical fact matters because it shows this isn't a new problem that one player would have solved. So what should you take away? First, stop looking for a single scapegoat or savior. Football is messy, and teams fail or succeed because of collective performance. Second, celebrate Micah's talent honestly. He's a game changer in the pass rush. But don't let emotion turn that into a fantasy that the Cowboys would automatically be cruising if he were wearing the star today. Third, the realistic path forward for this defense is accountability. Coaches must settle into a clear identity. Players must execute fundamentals. And role players have to develop or be adjusted so the unit can be more than the sum of its parts. Now I want you to get involved. Say yes or no in the comments. Would the Cowboys be better right now with Micah back? And add one sentence explaining why. I'll read replies. And I'll pin the best answer. Also, hit that subscribe button to help us hit 16,000 subscribers. It's our target, and every new sub helps these conversations reach more Cowboys fans. And like the video if you want more honest breakdowns like this. If you want a follow-up, I'm putting one together that digs into Brian Schottenheimer's recent challenge to the offense and what that means for this team's short-term outlook. So let me know if you want that next. Until then, DC4L. God bless. Let's talk Cowboys where we talk facts. Peace.